Does Texas A&M have defensive line depth issues heading into the 2025 season?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. The all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later in the episode. On the show today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk a little bit about the basketball team in the SEC tournament. We're going to have to talk about some seeding. Who do you want to end up playing? Who do you want to win? Where do you want to be upset? And can the Aggies make the run all the way to Sunday and play for an SEC championship? We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about some goals for the football team this spring. What do we kind of want to see this team continue to get better at? What do we want to see this team work on? What do we want to see this team improve on over the next 2-3 months, kind of before we get deeper into the summer? But we're going to start the show talking about some defensive line depth. There's no question that there's some depth questions about this team at the defensive line. So read an article today from Aggies Wire talking about, it was titled, Texas A&M D-line depth needs to be addressed in the spring transfer portal. So this article kind of talks about how Texas A&M's 2024 season is in the rearview mirror, and while the Aggies fan base is understandably in the wait-and-see mode after watching head coach Mike Elko's inaugural campaign in with the 1-4 finish after shortened 7-1 and 5-0 in the SEC. Injuries paired with Marcel Reed's lack of development as a passer doomed the Aggies when the offseason began. Elko and his staff accomplished several goals, bringing in 14 players from the portal. The program, including programs like Nebraska and Texas will not hold a spring game, Elko's choice to continue the annual Maroon and White game likely has to do with the need to help his newly constructed roster gel early heading into the fall. Outside of Marcel Reed's connection with several new wide receivers, including Casey Concepcion, Texas A&M's defensive line depth is still the biggest question, as former Iowa State defensive lineman Tyler Yenum represents the only interior defensive line addition, joining junior DJ Hicks and senior Albert Regis. Well, redshirt freshman defensive lineman Dalen Evans is a name to watch this spring, which I agree with that. We're going to talk more about him in the coming weeks. He lacks the experience to play significant snaps in 2025, meaning Elko will need to attack the transfer portal once again and add at least one or two more experienced defensive tackles to fill out the room. However, the Aggies are stacked at edge, landing Samuel Mpemba from Georgia, TJ Searcy from Florida, Deion Hayes from Colorado. Of course, and Cassius Howell and Rylan Kennedy are already part of that room. The spring transfer portal will open on April 16th and close on the 25th, granting Elko ample time to fill out the roster at several position groups, especially in the defensive trenches. So, I've talked about this a lot throughout the last few weeks. I think defensive line is that one position where you really kind of need some new guys. I mean, you're in a spot where you did a great job bringing in players in that edge room, but there's the concerns when it comes to your interior defensive lineman. Yes, I have my concerns with the interior defensive lineman. I think that I like Regis. I like DJ Hicks. I like Oyenum a lot. I think Oyenum is going to come in and be a dominant run stopper for this football team, but I think you need more bodies. I mean, you lost a lot across this defensive line. And when I say across it, I mean all across it, whether to the portal, whether to the NFL draft, whether to losing eligibility. You lost a lot of players this offseason. And, I really want to see this Texas A&M defensive line. I don't know if there's many surefire positions that we just know are always going to be good. Maybe like receiver at Alabama, a Texas A&M defensive line is always great. I think the defense in general for Georgia is always really good. Like there's these surefires that are always going to be good. And yeah, I think that's the case once again for this Texas A&M defensive line. I think it's once again going to be really good. I think that compared to last year, there are a lot more question marks. I mean, we talk about these position groups that have the question marks surrounding them. And we've seen that be Texas A&M at times, but, we've seen that be Texas A&M. We've seen those question marks around some different units be, perhaps it's last year was the offensive line, or this year's probably the secondary. Like there's those question marks heading into the season for positions. It's normally not the case for the Texas A&M defensive line, but it is this year. And I think it's more due to just the depth. I mean, I think that we feel great about all the players you brought in, all the players via the portal, the guys that you brought on the defensive line, the edge rushers, Oyinum. I think you feel great about Hicks and Regis, and of course, feel great about Cassius Howell. So I think that, and then once again, Ryland Kennedy and I mean, there's guys on this roster that we feel good about. And Evans is a great example, which guys are talking about. Yeah, I think he's a player that has that ability to elevate his game from here to here. I think he's going to take that next step. I do. I think he's got that in him. And you have some young players that are ready to take their next steps, but I think it's got to have to happen. And that's why it's a question mark. I think you have a lot of players that we're sitting here saying to ourselves, yeah, they're going to be fine. They're going to be good, but we still got to see them prove it. I think that's kind of the reality. And that hasn't been the case of recent, last year. I mean, even like when you bring in a guy like Nick Scorton, we all knew Nick Scorton was going to be a stud. So I don't think this was a concern last year for the defensive line. So these concerns, once again, I think it's better than, and I think I said this analogy this week, which was kind of like, hey, I think this Texas A&M defense, I feel pretty confirmed that it's going to be good. What were the question marks surrounding this Texas A&M defensive line is whether or not it's elite. That is the question. It's going to be good. Can it take that next step to elite? And I think you've got the pieces. And I mean, I think Dalen Evans is a great example of a person to talk about within this conversation of if this kid can take that step to the next level, this Texas A&M defensive line is going to be unstoppable. And then you've got, Hayes and Searcy, and the upside of Mpimba, Cassius Howell, I think he turned himself into a first-round pick. You've got a lot there. The problem is, you feel good about here's the thing. I'd say right now your depth is fine this second. But, how's that depth going to be looking around week 6, 7, 8 once we get deeper into the season? Probably not how it's looking right now. So, I have some confidence in this Texas A&M defensive line for the future, and I do think that it is going to be really solid. But at the same time, I think that you got some players that it's their prove it year. And I think the best example of that is, the best example of who's having a prove it year would probably have to be DJ Hicks. A guy that came in, this 5-star elite talent who we think is going to be just an absolute monster. And he's been, I feel like sometimes I'm a little too hard on DJ Hicks. He's not been bad. I just don't think he's been what we expect from a top 10 player in the recruiting class. He's been, so I think that this is kind of that prove it year for him. I think it's his, hey, are you this dude? Are you this NFL talent pick player that we thought you were going to be when you came here? So that is something that I want to see happen. I want to see DJ Hicks have that prove it year where he says, yeah, look, everybody shut up. I am this great player that y'all thought I was, and I am that guy. And I think he can do that. Once again, Regis, what you got there. Been around for a while, and Cassius Howell, I think, is going to have this great step. The issue is going to be if the injury bug gets a hold of this Texas A&M defensive line, you're not in a good spot right now. That's my concern. If you avoid the injury bug and you're able to stay healthy, okay, we're not all that concerned. Okay, we feel fine about it. But if the injury bug kind of gets the best of your defensive line, then we're sitting here going, ooh, okay, are we going to be able to get these guys healthy? Are we going to be able to, what's going to happen if we lose a couple players to the injury bug? And that's what is going to, really kind of make or break, I think, this defensive line for the Aggies. But yes, no, I have a ton of confidence in this group. I really do. I'm not worried. I wouldn't now, when I'm saying I'm not worried, why the heck not go get another player or two to add? There's no reason not to. I'm all for that. I'm just saying, no, I'm not super concerned about it when it comes to, I think Elko's going to do it. I think he understands. I think he knows his roster and he knows how to build the proper roster and knows everything he needs. So no, I'm not concerned about depth, I am concerned about it, but I think that Coach Elko is going to fix it. That's my reality. I think that he knows he needs a player or two, and so I think we'll see when the April portal rolls around, Coach Elko is going to add there. We're going to start talking about a few goals of this football team for the spring. I've got 3 goals, just things we want to see improve over the next, 2-3 months. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I can tell you about our friends over at Nissan. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College Basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart from top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets. These guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada clear-cut team of the week are the Duke Blue Devils. John Shire's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped through the ACC, going 19-1. The Blue Devils were plus 434 points in the ACC, the largest point differential by power conference team in league play since Kentucky in the 1953-54 season. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Duke Blue Devils have done here. It's clear that the team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can with an all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada Rogue or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. I'm a believer that perhaps the Nissan team of the week should have been the Aggies, but hey, I'm not what the people who pick. I wish I was, because it would have been the Aggies with the wins over Auburn and LSU. But goals for this spring. I have a lot of goals for this football team this spring, and I think that the number one goal is I want to see Marcel Reed build a rapport, build some, get to know his receivers. And, the number one guy I think is we want to see Casey Concepcion get going. We want to see him and Marcel Reed kind of start to figure everything out. I mean, we feel really confident that they are going to figure that out. And I think that we've talked about this a lot here on the show, but my thought is if Marcel Reed is able to continue to develop and get better and better and better as a passer, it's just going to make this football team even better. So, yeah, I want to see the Aggies and their quarterback and their receiving room kind of really start to figure this out. Because as y'all know, I think this offense is set to take that step next year. I mean, and here's my take on the offense for those that say, well, what are you talking about? I'll tell you this. I say right now, with the pieces you brought in at receiver and who you have at running back and the offensive line that you're bringing back pretty much everybody and all your starters and all that, and Marcel Reed, if he doesn't improve at all as a passer, he just is what he was last year. I think Texas A&M can have a top 7 offense in the SEC, and I think they can win 8 football games. Just right there. Now, if Marcel Reed develops as a passer and gets better in that aspect of the game, which I think he's going to, I've talked about this a lot. I mean, what do y'all think that they're doing in the offseason? Like, do we not think that they're trying to improve Marcel Reed's passing ability? Like, that's definitely the number one goal of this coaching staff, is to continue to improve the passing of Marcel Reed, because if he does get better as a passer, if he does improve in that aspect, it's just going to make this football team a lot better. So I think that's a big priority. But yeah, I mean, getting to know your receivers. I mean, we feel good. Obviously, there was some news about Mario Craver and so there. I don't know if y'all saw. Google that if you haven't seen that. But he's a player that's going to be really good for us. Obviously, Terry Bussey's going to be great. Casey Concepcion, I think, is going to be an absolute star. We all know that. Jonah Wilson to come in and help you. I mean, I still think that Ashton Bethel-Roman has a great career ahead of him. I think he's going to play more snaps than we think this year. But I'd love to just see more. So we kind of, like I said, build a rapport with those players, because he's going, the ability to develop as a passer is going to make or break, the real upside of this offense. Like I said, it can be good. It can win football games, but can it make an SEC championship game? Can it make a college football playoff appearance? That, to me, is all going to be based on what happens with the Marcel Reed as a passer developing to the next level. The next thing I've got for goals is I want to figure out who the tight end is going to be. I want to figure out, because I mean, last year, if y'all remember correctly, I'm 99.9% sure about this, but wasn't it Calhoun that came in the second window? I think so. So I think the staff saw something after spring within the tight end room. So we need to get another guy, which is interesting. But you go get Amari Niblack and Mike O'Reilly and Nate Borgerture, and you've got all these tight ends on the roster now, and you're kind of looking at it and you're saying to yourself, well, you know what? If we can get one of these guys to step up, I think that it's going to go a long way in this tight end room because we need one player to step up. And I've been very vocal here on Locked On Aggies that I believe that's going to be Amari Niblack. I think that he's probably the best option you got. I just don't. I think Nate Borgerture, we know who he is. He is a great run blocker. He's one of the best run blocking tight ends, film-wise, that I've seen in a while. He's good at that. He's great in that aspect of the game, but he's not an elite pass catcher. Mike O'Reilly's a wild card. We don't know much about him. We don't know what he's going to do. Then you've got Armstrong, the freshman, and you've, of course, got Theo. You've got a lot of tight ends, but I want someone to be the guy. That's what I want to get figured out over these next couple months. Someone be the guy. I'm not saying this in terms of like, well, if this doesn't work out, we'll need to go get another guy in the transfer portal. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I would really like to see one of the tight ends prove that they're going to be the guy. That's all I want to see. Next thing is, and this is kind of, 2 seconds, we'll talk about this, but the defensive line, we just got done talking about this, but it's the conversation we had. Yes, you need to see whether or not you have the depth, or, just are some of these guys the answer? And if they're not, that's a position that, knowing this defense, you've got to be good on your defensive line. So if there are issues there, the coaching staff needs to make sure they are going in the portal and adding some players. So these next 2 months will be very interesting on the defensive line. And in a similar conversation, the secondary. Texas A&M secondary has got to be really, really good. The secondary has to be better than it's been. It's just not been good of late. The secondary has been a real issue the last few years for the Aggies. They've been just about terrible. I think that's a fair way to say it. That might be a little rude, but that's reality. So want to see this secondary improve. And if it doesn't, you go and get you went and got Humphrey and Shaw. If these guys aren't the answer, or if maybe you don't have enough guys, or the unit's just not coming together, if this goal doesn't happen, you then can go in that transfer portal in mid-April and add players. And that's why this is so important. That's why if these goals aren't achieved basically over the next month, and I'll honestly keep saying a couple months, it's really over the next month. If this goal isn't achieved over the next month, you need to go and add some players in the transfer portal and improve this roster in that way. So that is something that I'm going to be monitoring, because once again, this defensive line has to be really good. This secondary has to be really good. And I think that there might be the need to go add a few more players in these positions via the transfer portal. So the coaching staff, those two positions, especially, because I think you feel pretty good. I think linebacker, I feel pretty good. Maybe you can go get linebacker is the one of the position where I'd say, hey, if you want to go get one more, that's fine. But so pretty much the entire defense, all the positions, if you want to go get one more guy, I'm cool with it. But receiver, quarterback, running back, offensive line, tight end, I think we all feel pretty good in those positions. So I think if they're going to be adding more players, it's going to be to the defense more so than the offense. We're going to talk a little bit about this basketball team and the SEC tournament. It's going to be, the SEC tournament's a ton of fun. I'll be in Nashville for it. A good turnout last year of Texas A&M fans. I thought there was a good amount of Aggie fans there in Nashville. So we're going to talk about it. What's the best path for the Aggies? What's the teams you want to avoid? The best case scenario. We'll talk about all that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Roy. Attention Locked On Aggies fans, ever wished you could directly support your favorite Texas A&M athletes and be part of their journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before, Roy NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Texas A&M. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, and get exclusive content straight from the athletes you back. The best part is if your player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show support to your school and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Texas A&M athletics. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Texas A&M athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. So the SEC tournament is coming up this week. I'm really looking forward to it. Me and my buddies go down every year because it's Nashville. For those of you that have never been to Nashville, go to Nashville. It's just the most fun city in the world. I love Nashville. I mean, it's just awesome. So I go down there every year with my buddies, but I'll be down there working a little bit as well. So the Aggies will open things up on Thursday. Playing the first game is noon Central Time. They'll play 25 minutes after that game. So probably around 3 Central Time, I'd say, realistically. And then the other game that they're waiting to find out the results from, and we've talked about it a little bit, is Texas and Vandy. I'd like to see the Aggies play the Longhorns. This is interesting. I think that, Texas, Trey Johnson's a stud. They've got the best player between those two teams, but I think Vandy's probably a little bit better of a basketball team. I don't understand why Texas isn't better than they are. I find it interesting. And maybe it's because college basketball teams aren't built to have these elite NBA players. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, like Trey Johnson's a great player, but I think it's kind of why Arkansas is starting to come around a little bit because Boogie Flant, who's going to be a great NBA player, was kind of holding back a bit. So, I think I'd rather probably, I'd rather play Texas just because I think it'd be great to win the rubber match of that game. Vandy, of course, is a team that came and beat you at your own place if you're the Aggies, and it was embarrassing, a game that you should have won. And then they kind of spiraled and lost their last two, which is the reason they're the 12th seed. They had a shot to be the 8th seed. So if you win this first game, you're going to play Tennessee. That's confirmed. Like, they don't have to play anybody. If we win against either Vandy or Texas, we're playing Tennessee. And I think we can beat Tennessee. I mean, I know we lost to them, but I think that this team is capable of beating Tennessee if they play their style of basketball, because both of these teams play similar, and I think it is who's going to play better. And I think that Wade Taylor's heating up since last playing them and all that. So I think that's doable. Then you'll likely play Auburn, who, once again, we've discussed this. I mean, Buzz Williams is Bruce Pearl's kryptonite. I mean, he can't beat him. What is he? 6-2, I think, all time against Buzz. I mean, or Buzz is against Bruce. So I think that's a legit path. I mean, I'll tell you this. The way Texas A&M played last week with the road win over LSU, great second half against against a bad team, but a good second half to kind of say, hey, okay, we're not messing around and losing this game. Then in the upset win over number 1 Auburn. I mean, this team's feeling good. They're feeling confident heading into the postseason. So, do I feel great about the Aggies winning this entire thing? No, I don't. But I mean, I'll tell you this. I think if you beat Vandy or Texas, you probably for sure, I would say that you've already got the 3 seed locked up in the NCAA tournament. But if you beat Texas or Vandy, I'd say you for sure lock it up. So there's goals in this game other than just winning the SEC tournament, or in this tournament other than just winning the SEC tournament. There's goals for the NCAA tournament as well. But yes, if you're going, you go to win. Let's win the darn thing. So that is my thoughts on that. So the plan for the rest of the week, I'll have a show tomorrow. On Thursday, I'm going to be, me and my buddies are getting in the car and heading down to Nashville. So I will have like a 10, 12-minute like SEC tournament preview type of thing come out on Thursday. And then on Thursday, I'm going to record a full episode for Friday, pre-record it, and then that'll come out to y'all on a Friday. So that's the plan for the rest of the week. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day today. Really appreciate y'all being here. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that 5-star review over on podcast platforms. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next time right here on Locked On Aggies.